Serious, thank you.
All right, chat. Oh, we're recording now. Okay. Amen. Right. In that case, let's get started, and I will introduce our speaker. Thank you very much, folks, for joining us for our final September event for the Program for Learning and Community Engagement. This is a talk that is also being hosted on behalf of Hispanic Heritage Month by the Department of History and Political Science, as well as the President's Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So I know our speaker has a lot to say, so I'm not going to bore you with an introduction, but it is our very own Professor Michael Perri, Professor of History here at A&M Texarkana. Expert in colonial Latin America, who is currently cataloging a variety of exciting primary source documents for us that were donated. One of which is going to be speaking today, the Florentine Codex. And with that, we should have some time at the end for questions, but I'll be quiet. Dr. Perri, take it away.
Thank you. Actually, this is not completely on the Florentine Codex. Now I forgot how to minimize.
Pass. I don't know.
How do I get it so I just have a green thing up there?
You just have to wait. It'll do it by itself.
All right. So as the flyer said, it's also about the spiritual conflict, right? So that if you could read this thing, it would say Mexico religion. Now, I am not an expert on the Mexico religion. Now, what Mexico? We probably know them as the Aztecs, right? Technically, it's the Aztec Empire and Mexica people, but I'll probably use both Aztec people and Mexica. Are you sure this thing's gonna go away?
No.
It probably won't. It stays there forever on mine, but
yeah.
Good luck. Yeah.
That is really annoying.
Indeed it is. That's the beauty of Zoom, baby.
Hide floating meeting control.
Just turn it on.
Click that right there.
Where?
Go down.
It's on the
Click
top
the arrow
right,
again.
it says hide floating meeting control. There it is.
Ah.
All right, thank you. All right, so I am going to just really overly simplify Mexica religion. There are people who make their whole career, say this half their lives, or more than that. But I'm going to really kind of simplify. What you have is a polytheistic religion of that goes back millennia, right? In my Latin American history class, we go all the way back to the Olmecs, right? And thousands and thousands of years ago, we find similar gods, Tlaloc, Quetzalcoatl, other gods. Now, one of the things that you find with this, though, is that there's so many gods that every people have their own kind of patron saint god, right? Or their own special god that protects them and they particularly worship. And so that's important for their community. But there's all these competing gods, just like competing societies. And when people conquer other people, usually that god is seen as a more dominant or powerful god. But the conquering peoples don't have any notion of possibly getting rid of the old gods or replacing the old gods. Why would you do that? Why would you replace Tlaloc, the god of rain? Rain is a good thing, right? So why would you replace it? The other thing about these gods is they're really hard to pin down and just do a definition, because a lot of them have duality, right? You have, for example, Tepoka, the smoking mirror god, who always just changing his image, right? You can change his image at any time. Some of these guys have both a feminine and masculine side of them. Some of them have a more belligerent, and some of them have a more peaceful side of them. They're complex kind of deities, right? So, there you go, I need to kind of move on, but I thought I was getting cute, maybe too cute, when I said, your God's okay, my God's okay, as long as you worship Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl was the main god of the Aztecs, right? And it was the hummingbird god. Hummingbird god, and it was also the god of war, right? I did not know this, but all birds are terrified of the hummingbird. Your most majestic eagle will run away from a hummingbird's nest because the hummingbird can fly like this all around and get that eagle before the eagle can do anything. It's a very vicious bird in the bird world. All right? I had no idea. But, so, this is really annoying me.
I know, you have to get rid of it again. Sorry, Perri. This is a test. Don't do that.
Well, I forgot.
You got more people now.
We believe it, yes.
I believe in you, Mike. High floating eating. There you go.
All right.
Don't let anybody else in.
Okay, so after the conquest, Cortez, by the way, really thought his kind of God-given task to conquer and convert. And afterwards, he invites Franciscans. He asked the crown for Franciscans, of course, 12, like the 12 disciples. And these Franciscans are men right out of the Renaissance, right? In fact, there's this huge kind of within the Franciscan regular orders and all the regular orders of Spain, a kind of Reformation, it predates the Reformation in Germany by Martin Luther. And that's why you really don't have any kind of Reformation in Spain, because it's kind of already done in Spain. And these men are often highly educated. They're mendicant priests. Regular clergy, it means they're religious orders like the Dominicans, the Augustinians, the Franciscans. And they often are more educated than the secular clergy. Here are some more images of these priests. Now, there was pushback, right? Here's a surviving priest who says, "You say our gods are not original, that's news to us. Our ancestors came to earth, and they spoke quite differently. They gave us our supper and our breakfast, and we begged them for thunder and rain and water." So,
Okay, we'll take care of the Zoom, Perri. Don't worry about it.
there was, a variety of different opinions here. So here's some more of the 12 Franciscans. I'm going to go through this relatively fast. This is a great picture, though. Supposedly, they walked 200 some miles barefooted. The Indians couldn't believe how ragged they were. Their priests were all dressed up and fancy. These were mendicant priests with the vows of poverty and chastity. And when they finally arrived to Mexico City, the former Tenochtitlan, Cortez gets on his knees and thanks them for coming. And this is a kind of a big show that this happens because they were, he's saying to the natives back here, you need to look at how much we honor these people, and you need to honor these people as well. Here, this is a church of Huitzilopochtli. You can see this goes right back to the 1520s, one of the oldest churches in Mexico. Here's another. These kind of churches were also built almost as basically forts if the church failed, right? So I'm going to go through this quite quick. So one of these 12 was a Franciscan named Fray Toribio Benavente. And he arrived lame and in tatters, and the natives affectionately called him Botelania, or poor little one. Botelania founded many cloisters, convents, and claims to have baptized 400,000 Indians. And why? How could he do this? The Mexica people, by the Texcocans and the Tarascanos and the Tlaxcalans, the people of Mesoamerica after this conquest were eager to be baptized, to accept the Christian God. If you're the priest here, you're like, I don't know this experience. The Moors in Iberia certainly weren't eager to be Christians, right? The Jews in Europe certainly not eager to be Christians. What is with these guys? I love it. God has actually now brought us into contact with the second half of the world, the unknown half, and soon the second coming will come. There will be a millennium. And they really get very excited about this. They're certain this is going to happen. They cannot believe that in the hundreds of thousands people are lining up to get baptized. And they are. There's kind of a miscommunication here. What? Why? Because first of all, you got to realize that the people of Mesoamerica, they're Totonac, they're Tectelans, they're Tarascanos, they're Zapotecs, they're Mixtecs. There's so many people, different peoples of different languages, and when one conquered the other, you accept that their God is the most powerful God at that moment, right? They must have a powerful God. So now they would be crazy not to accept the Christian God. Why? Well, they had just experienced an absolutely devastating conquest. They tried to stop these guys, which was kind of also a civil war, but they couldn't. Not only that, after the conquest, and during the conquest, right, the year before the conquest, and then after, they're suffering things with epidemics such as smallpox, and then measles, and then mumps. They're getting bounced around with these horrible viruses, right? So the Spaniards are not affected. My goodness, their gods protect them. Their gods are powerful gods. They conquered, and now they protect the Spaniards and comfort us. We need to recognize these gods. They understand this. They are eager to do this. They want the protection of the Spanish gods. You know what they said, gods? I'll get to that. So here they are being baptized. Right? Here's a guy, one of the 12, baptizing or teaching here. Well, what they didn't understand was this is supposedly monotheistic. And the Spaniards go, no, you can't go back to your old gods. They don't understand this. What, you're going to extirpate or basically blot out our gods? What are we going to need when we need rain? And we don't pray to Tolok. What do we need when we want fertility? We have to pray to Tonantzin. What do we need when we need corn? We want to pray to Quetzalcoatl. No, say the Spaniards. One God, monotheism. Now just imagine all of us are so familiar with the Christian religion that we just instinctually assume and know what things are like the Trinity. Imagine you're an adult that has never been exposed to the Christian tradition. And someone goes, we only have one God. The Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. That guy doesn't know what to count. Right? And they adore and worship the Virgin Mary. Where is she in this? And then they have all these saints. And an angel called Michael. So confused. Or maybe they're confused. Or maybe I'm confused. Can we accept your God? We have to get rid of our gods? Who are these people? They're kind of crazy. And here are these Franciscans burning all the traditional books and clothes. And here are some that slide back. Oh, we caught you worshiping your God. Bad you. We need to hang you now. All right, then here's the case of San Carlos. I cannot pronounce San Carlos' name, by the way. So you'll just have to, I'm not a Natalico, which means a person who studies Nahuatl, the language of the Aztec. Mesoamerica. So I'm just gonna call him Don Carlos. He was a guy from Texcoco, a major city-state over here on the east side of Lake Texcoco. One of the major states of the empire. And he decided, I'm gonna convert, which is great because the Franciscans say, hey, if we convert the leaders, the people will follow. Right? But then everyone was shocked when the Inquisition arrested him in 1539. The Spanish charged Don Carlos with bigamy, idolatry, apostasy, which in their minds meant clinging to pre-conquest or pagan religion. Particularly damning from the Franciscan viewpoint was the fact that Don Carlos had kept secret and worshipped a large collection of images and old gods. Because he was like, this was actually not just him. They go, you're mad. You guys, you got to convert to my God. All your gods, you're going to have to get out and burn. Can you imagine some of them hiding them? Can you imagine some of them still worshiping in secret? We don't have to tell those Greeks. So this is what was going on. And he also had disdain for the regime. He said, and in reference to these Franciscans, he said, who are these people who bother us and perturb us and live among us and try to rule us? This is our land and our way of life and our possession. The rule of it belongs to us and will remain with us. Who comes here to subjugate us? Who are these people who are not our relatives, nor our blood, nor equal to us? Well, that was just as horrible, so they sentenced him to death publicly and burned him at the stake. Who was there? There was a guy named Fray Bernardino de Sahagún. He had already arrived in 1529. Sahagún was witnessing this and he goes, oh my gosh, this is really, I'm not sure the way to go. And he concluded that what they needed to do was better understand these native peoples in order to better convert them. And only by studying, recording, and truly understanding the native religion and culture could Spaniards hope to convert native peoples. Sahagún, along with the Franciscan, Dominican, Augustinians, and later Jesuits, produced a series of written guides that included grammars, dictionary, native languages, the native languages, also detailed accounts of native religion, as well as conversion tools such as confessional manuals, catechisms, and sermons in the native languages. So here's some more about him. He now also was working at the school of teaching native nobles at Tlatelolco. Colegio de Santa Cruz de Tlatelolco. It was already built on a previous Aztec school for the nobles of Calmayaca. So using his Colegio de Santa Cruz de Tlatelolco as his base, Sahagún began assembling this now famous Florentine Codex. He collaborated with his students and former students to conduct interviews and gather evidence. His collaborators mostly interviewed principales. Principales is a hard thing, and it's basically, I think I put it there, wise men, elders, politically important men in many cases, in their case, mostly elders. His students not only recorded the principales' answers about history, culture, religion, but also illustrated many of the stories with paintings, following the tradition of Aztec scribes. Painted manuscripts with pictures or pictographs have been a tradition of Noah practice. Where was this? Okay, so if you go over here, this is Nochagan. Tlatelolco was where the big, huge marketplace was. It was its own Atepel, or own kind of kingdom within Tenochtitlan. And it's still there today. This is the Plaza de las Tres Culturas, the Plaza of Three Cultures, because it has modern buildings, colonial buildings, and the ruins of this huge marketplace at Altepec. This, my folks, is in the 1530s, was the Colegio, or the school of Santa Cruz de Tlatelolco. This is where the Florentine Codex was made. Here's the marketplace. This is another vision of the marketplace, Tate Local. I love to know where things are in these things sometimes. So what did they produce? They produced this, what is a codex? A codex is a handwritten book. And it's called the Florentine Codex because it was later found in the 19th century in the Florentine Library in Florence. It consists of 2,400 pages and approximately 2,500 illustrations, both in Spanish and Nahuatl. And many scholars think the text, the pictures, are kind of the third text. If someone asked you to give a talk on the Encyclopedia Britannica, how would you do it? I want to know what the contents are, right? You couldn't do it. It records in 12 books every aspect of life, and it's really frustrating that it's so contradictory. In some ways, it's a mess. Because they're interviewing this guy, and he's so sure it's this way. They interview this guy, and wait a second, that doesn't completely gel. They interview this guy, right? And it's very controversial. And the other big question that historians have is how much did the Spanish fire influence this? But here's the cook, here's farming, featherworks, African going on maize, so that's their tradition, right? Take care of kids, weaving. The good farmer, planting trees, making tamales, marriage ceremony, very important. Washing hair, brushing teeth. Did I say every aspect of life? Did I? Okay, good. This is a really good one. This is the Tempawita ceremony, which is the ceremony of the dead. This ceremony was one of the oldest religious festivals. Tradition of the Mexica observed the holiday at Tempawita, one of their 20-day months, by remembering their dead relatives through communal feast, song, and dance. Now later that will turn into day, All Saints Day, right? As we know it, Day of the Dead. Is that still kind of with us? Happily so, right? This is a really interesting thing. When the Spaniards got there, they tried to explain Christianity. They go, and the devil. What's the word for devil in the law? We don't have one. I mean, our gods have a good side of them and a bad side of them. Just like people. Except they're gods. They're much more powerful, right? What is a devil? Could you explain the devil to me? I mean, again, we are so familiar with our Christian tradition, right? And our Christian images that we don't always know, we don't even think about this anymore, right? But in Lisa Souza, in a great article in the Journal of the Americas, published this book on the devil and deviance in native criminal narratives of New Mexico. And they start looking around for trying to define the devil or diablos or demons, right? Maybe it's this murderer guy, right? So figure this, this guy's actually, they use the word gatol, which means enemy, right? Maybe that's what it is, right? Well, and this is a great one. This is the Procreus, right? We later going to have all kinds of things with prostitutes as well. But the Procreus, right? To try to get this woman to go into prostitution, right? Maybe that is the devil. Now, the reason I'm fascinated with this is because these are obviously native artists, but this is obviously Christianity and the friar infusion and influence. The friars were, like many men of the cloth, obsessed with the sexuality of others, right? And so, they're like, this is wrong. This is the devil is trying, this is a European devil. There is nothing like this in pre-Columbian polytheistic world, right? And so, we're looking for all these words to come up with. Later, by the way, the law is a fascinating topic, the whole languages. And one of the one Lincoln, James Lockhart, talks about how it changes 16th century, 17th century, 18th century, changes until because it's an infusion of Spanish. Prostitutes. Right? Here is a prostitute with red shoes and a gold cup. That is so European. Right? So they even have, maybe the friars are telling what a prostitute looks like. Here are transvestites, which is also no, and this is the burning of a homosexual, right? How important is the Florentine Codex? Well, they also portray the very founding of the Mexica people, right? This is the whole legend of the eagle with a serpent's claws landing on a cactus, which we have on the Mexican flag, right? Flower wars, the almonds, sacrifices, gods. There is a lot here in this codex, including the 12th book, which is most controversial, that deals with the conquest. What we have in the spiritual conquest is a conquest only half done. And this is what we call synchronism. The whole Juan Diego, the vision of Juan Diego, seeing the Virgin of Guadalupe on the hill of Tepeyac, the ancient place of the goddess of fertility, Clementine, is what? She says, you are my people too, right? So I don't know how much you know the story of the Virgin Guadalupe. You don't know the story of Virgin Guadalupe? So Juan Diego is walking around, and he gets terrified. He sees an apparition of Virgin Mary. He says, what do you want with me, God? I'm just a simple, poor, humble, good man. That's a poor origin. And she goes, go tell the bishop that we should build a basilica here on the hill of Tepeyac. So he goes tell the bishop laughs at him, and doesn't go away. And then later, on December 12th, he comes by and he says, okay, she sees him again. He's trying to avoid the hill, but he happens to shortcut home. So he finally goes by the hill of Tepeyac. She appears to him again and goes, I told him that nothing happened. Why are you doing this to me? Just leave me alone. I'm terrified of you. She goes, no, you are God's children too. You need to know this, well, I'm here to tell you that you and your people are also loved by God and God's children. And well, I can't prove it to their Archbishop Duramaga. Says, okay, go gather roses on the other side of the hill and come back. Roses in the middle of winter? No. But he goes over, he finds roses, he puts them in his tarp, and she says, okay, now bring it to him. So he brings it to this tarp of roses to the Archbishop, and he brings it down like this, and it's the image of the Virgin of Guadalupe. It's on there, Duramaga says, this is a miracle, and he builds a basilica there. And this is the patron saint of Mexico. And this is the old basilica next to the new basilica. And if you go there just about any weekend, the biggest thing you do is try not to get trampled on by all the pilgrims. Okay, here I'm bringing students many years ago. Yes, that's me along with my daughter. Now, when you go there, there's this interesting thing with Aztec dances and incense, and you find this kind of Aztec next to the Catholic. It's stunning. Here's the whole, this is the statue in the back here, the whole other thing. Huge part now. All right. And now it eventually gets off the rest of Mexico. Now, one of the things I'd like to tell you is, this is my daughter, Gabe, is that when I go to Mexico, like today, we go and we all get in this old truck and we go to this sacred place of San Lucas in Michoacan. Why? Because we need to see, this is the place, 16th century church. We need to buy something to give her, right? Candles, flowers. This is the modern one. And in the courtyard, they have the original one going back to the 16th century. So San Maria de Agreda is a saint, or a virgin, no, it's not saint, it's an apparition of the Virgin Mary, that also was built in a sacred Kulaka, an ancient place of earlier gods. And so what's interesting to me is they have all these, or this courtyard, they have all these testimonials around here about how she has helped them. Help me with my mischief child, or my husband in a car accident, or anything, all these testimonials, how they helped. This is syncretism. So, I was going to talk a little about the Florentine Codex, but it's one thing I need to tell you is it's problematic, right? Because it's too easy to deconstruct. And it's hard to know where the Spanish begins and where the native is still there. But in conclusion, native response to Spanish attempt to convert them were surprisingly, not surprisingly, actually varied and complex. But to simplify, native peoples accommodated Christianity on several levels. One was the universal level of the Catholic Church as an institution. Christianity as the official religion and the cornerstone of beliefs. Another was the local level, the patron saints and deities that protected and were nurtured by the individual communities, right? Maria de Agreda, that I just showed you, or the Virgin of Guadalupe on a national scale. And the third and most private level was that of interpersonal healing and interpersonal magic. None of these levels at any time was this process during the colonial era completed. The spiritual conquest was a protracted process of negotiation that lasted the whole colonial period. Now, unfortunately, we know the friars ended up very frustrated because they couldn't completely convert these people, right? This is a quote saying how they're not really completely converted. But yet, I would not say it wasn't sincere. The result is a very, very Mexican form of Catholicism, and that they are very proud of in many cases. And it's their whole identity, and you can only understand it through the syncretism and its history.
Okay, thank you. Very good. Very informative, I like that. Excellent. All right, we've got a little bit of time for questions.
I love the question.
Well,
Maybe.
we'll see once we hear them. All right. Any questions before I ask the 15 or 16 I have? I was joking. I heard it for fun in the back. Anyone want to hear Mindy? Yeah.
You mentioned just briefly that there was a possibility that the friars influenced what went into the Florentine Codex. How much do you think they excluded from it? I mean, it seems like it's pretty bulky source, but do you think that that there was is there any source that shows experiences in the daily life of the Mexica that didn't make it into the Codex because the friars edited it out?
Well, yeah, especially the 12th book of the Conquest.
Okay.
And that's the one that scholars have most deconstructed and most examined and most terrible. So yes, but a lot of things, no. I mean, they were very selective editors. They're not going to edit how they brush your teeth, for example, right? But I'm directing you of how to write this thing, and I know what truth is, and you don't. So I'm going to edit it. You better. You probably don't even need it. You know what I think is truth, right? Are you going to be radical and write something that you know that I won't approve of?
I mean, I would. But
Yes,
well, yes.
you're asking the wrong people.
I'm really the wrong person to ask.
Not you personally. And other questions? Anyone else wants to? Yeah. Look.
How did the Catholic Church feel about the making of the Florentine Codex? Were they okay with?
Oh, that's great. No, it's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, at first they were all enthusiastic about we need to understand these people more, we need to convert more. And after the execution of Don Carlos, they say, oh, this is not appropriate. We don't even think they should ever be priests, and the Inquisition can't examine them anymore because they're like children. They just don't understand. So the Inquisition will only be for Spaniards and slaves, right? Which I don't know why, but yeah, later though, in 1577 under Philip II, they're going to get, they're going to say, no, we don't even want the wall, right? We just think we should just really try to blot it out. And so Sahagún has to then ship all his stuff across the ocean. And under some kind of agreement, he's allowed to work on it. But now after this point, all the writings are in Spanish and are more heavy-handedly directed. But yeah, there's a whole, that's just really simplified a bit. There's a lot more than that.
Any other questions before I ask one? I have a question for you, Perri, based purely on my ignorance of almost everything you spoke about. We do think often about the influence, obviously, of the religions that were already there to the Christianity that develops in Mexico. I'm wondering, do those developments ever go back across to Spain? Like, does it influence the Christianity that's being practiced in Spain by 1600 or so? What's happening here in the New World? Or is it pretty compartmentalized to the colony? I know that has nothing to do with your talk, but like.
Well, it's more complex than that because there's what's happening, I mean, it'd be like, is there anything from Europe, and Europe be all different? There's so many differences. So I don't actually, I'm not gonna be honest, I don't know the answer to that, but I have something that's interesting still. There's, in some cases, the Conquest takes some years. So in some cases in which the priests get actually captured and forced to assimilate into native society. And some of them don't want to go back to their Spanish religion, Spanish culture and Spanish society. And they have children with and everything. And this is just an absolute world-changing anathema. This thing, the crowd is, and this is, they cannot believe this. This is the biggest threat. This is the devil at his most potent. And because the priests going native. And they end up, he put him in a jail, he escapes, goes back, they find him, they put him in jail, and they actually do something really cool. It was when I'm thinking in South America. They put him in a cage on the beach and just let him die from exposure to elements. Because it's just unthinkable. Yeah. There's this one with Gonzalo, I teach my students, you might remember the whole story of Aquilar and Gonzalo Guerrero. And Gonzalo Guerrero, Aquilar goes to him and said, why would you sacrifice your soul for, staying with your new wife and your kids? Why would you do that? And, and that's the conversation.
Yeah. All right, we probably have time for one quick question. Or for a less quick question. Okay. One question before we release Dr. Perri. Yes.
Okay, so it's kind of like okay. You know how in museums and when you go to temples and stuff, obviously if you take a tour, the tour is given by whoever read the manuals or whatever. But do you think that sometimes what they are said is not what the actual story is, since the story is written by the colonizers who got there?
Oh yeah.
Because I
No, that's what, I go to a conference and this Florentine goes in, it's like such a mess. There's this debate and there's scholars like, no, it means this. No, it means that. You just bought into the Spanish culture. They didn't mean that. No, this is Spanish. No, I mean, I'm serious. You go to, there's what a conference like to go to is Rentals, right? And Fritz Schwaller, a scholar that I love dearly, but I mean, on the conference there, another scholar named Leon Portillo put together a book you guys might be familiar with called Roman Spirits. It's on the conference. And Fritz Schwaller, you've got to translate it wrong. It's not Roman Spirits, it's per arrow. And they'll have this, and then we'll go more and more into the translation into what. And yes, I mean, that it's a mess. It's a mess because there was always influence, right, of the Spanish, and yet it's done. Now, I've got to be careful here. Who are these people? They're young people in their 20s asking elders what happened 40 years ago. Okay, so let me do this. If I said, you guys go out and ask all, your elders about the history of the Vietnam War. Okay, so I bring it in, I write that down. I don't care if it's accurate or not. I just want to know and understand you guys more, right? So I can convert you or something, right? And so you're going to come back with some consistent story? Or the stories are going to be in agreement? Are they even going to be cohesive or comprehensible in some cases? Right? You're going to interview anti-war protesters and pro-war, people instead of, the press or the Jane Fonda law, or I mean, it's going to be a mess. Right? That is the Florentine Codex. On the other hand, we have something. I'd rather have something than nothing like this, right? And the origins, even the origins. I think the origin of the Mexican people from the 7 caves, or are they from the Lake of Aztlan? And we know nothing about this stuff. It's just.
That's a wonderful summary of the joy of being a historian. We're happy to have something, even if we don't know whether it's accurate at all. So, yeah.
Well, and this is more fraught than most documents with
That's fair.
teasing out the context.
Well, let's go ahead and thank Dr. Perri once again. So if you missed it, but that's an idiotic thing to say, because we're all here. We will post a recording of it on YouTube for the 4 or 5 people that follow that channel. And yeah, so thank you, Dr. Perri. Appreciate it. Well, take care.